Hello and welcome back, everyone, here today on episode 17 of the Adam Zera Show from my own studio right here in Burke, Virginia. We got some more moving and grooving news to talk about with you guys today. Of course, Lake Braddock boys basketball ended their season last Tuesday with a regional quarterfinals loss to Hayfield, who will be playing in the state tournament tomorrow over in Class 6, as they will be at South Lakes. We're getting a little season recap with boys hoops, as well as looking into where they will be come a 2025-2026 season. So before we start, always make sure you guys leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss another show. And share this video and stream with a friend. All that would be greatly appreciated. And so, without further ado, let's get into today's show here on the Adam Zera Show. So, of course, the Lake Braddock boys varsity basketball season has now come to an end. Unfortunately, they lost by 21 points to Hayfield last Tuesday over in Alexandria. So that concludes the end of their season. Of course, we'll kind of get into that game first now. Kind of seemed like, of course, now you expect with a team like Hayfield coming into that one. There's always a great program, always a great team with Coach Point Dexter and his crew over there, McFarland Brothers, Parker Cage, all them guys over there. You'd expect this, to be a pretty big uphill climb for the Bruins to face, and it certainly was like that most of the game. And the thing was, though, that the Bruins never really seemed to come all that close to really getting there. They were down by double digits majority of the game. Now, I only saw about the second half of that game because they got to that game just at the end of the second quarter when it was going to halftime. I didn't tell you they were down by 15 points when I got to Hayfield last Tuesday to watch that game with my dad. And so that, I'll tell you this. I was a little bit shocked, but not really that surprised to see that the Bruins lost by the score that they did and the play that they had. Again, with Hayfield, who you got to give it to them. They are much more talented than Lake Braddock. I think the Bruins just ran into a really tough team, and they just happened to get a bit unlucky where Hayfield was and being in their section of the regional tournament bracket. And so with that, Bruins maybe felt nervous a little bit coming into that one, and so maybe that it kind of affected their confidence. Certainly, you've seen that, the Bruins this year, even against the toughest opponents, even Woodson, who won the region over Hayfield on Friday night, they'll be playing Westfield at Woodson tomorrow for the state quarterfinals. The Bruins can play really close with them. They can play close with most of the teams in the area this year. If they had any of those 30-point blowout games we saw early in the season, like to Edison in December or Woodson in early January, it's probably because they weren't fully healthy or they just had players missing because of that. With this game, they pretty much had their full core of players. Everyone was going. And again, like I said, Hayfield was probably too much for them. Now, I will say this. It is the Bruins' fault where they could have played definitely a little bit better. They could have maybe made it a 10, 15-point game. And, it was 15 points. But certainly they could have won, or lost, I should say. Definitely going with a little more fight in them. I think what a lot of it was affected by, of course, was the fact that Tyee Clayton, the first-team All-District guard for the Bruins this year, he's been a star for the most part. Through playoffs, he had not been really doing all that well. Of course, we talk about how he's had a lot of shooting struggles not really hitting a lot of threes, which was a big part of his game. All those 20-point games he had this year was because he was hitting buckets from all three levels. But for the most part, he couldn't even really hit. Even from mid-range, he couldn't hit a lot. He could only probably really score from underneath a hoop. So obviously, with your best scorer this year, but of course, affected the Bruins a lot. You saw Xavier Maine getting a lot more action in that game, a lot through the playoffs. He had led the Bruins in scoring in the postseason this year. So you kind of saw a little bit of a trip down memory lane, I should say, with the last couple of years, with Maine scoring a lot of those points. Of course, again, Khalid Cash not out there as much for Bruins as he should be. Brickentena was starting a bit more, although I think he might have had a better game versus Hayfield. Again, Khalid Cash is the better defender overall than Entena, better scorer, better overall player. So, and Khalid Cash, of course, we talked about this on the last pod, about how he's been a 3-year varsity guy for him, and he had not been really getting a lot of starts even after he got healthy late in January. And so, that again, to me, still didn't really make a lot of sense. Especially against a team like Hayfield, you should probably have him there majority of the minutes, unless you want to give him a couple minutes to take a breath, which the Bruins were doing a lot more compared to that. Of course, we talked about that district semis catastrophe where Coach Demetrius was only using Khalid Cash on the bench. We saw no Riley Peterson. We weren't really seeing Walker Mitchell. Walker Mitchell wasn't really coming off the bench. Riley Peterson was coming off the bench a lot more of the last 2 games this season. One day we're playing in regionals versus TJ and Hayfield. The Bruins, of course, have been getting big rebound production and defensive production out of him this season. He was in there a lot more. Coach Demetrius obviously realized that he had to, probably rest some of his guys who were starting a bit more, give them, a breather, especially when you're going against a team that is as much depth as Hayfield or Woodson. You really need to do that. You just can't be everyone else out, or it'll just get tired really quickly, even though you think that, having all 5 of your best players, it gives you your best shot. But again, those players are going to tire out really quickly, especially, again, we talked about the depth with both those teams and teams that are as good as they are. They're going to have that depth that they're really going to beat you with. It's not going to be a 6-7 guy bench. Talk about an 8-guy bench. Having an 8-guy bench at the high school level is a gold mine for any high school coach. Majority of the time, you only see 6-7-man benches. Bruins, mostly in the playoffs, it was a 7-man bench. Some games, 6, with Khalid Cash coming off. 7, you include Cash and Peterson. But also in other games in the season, we'd seen an 8-man bench with Walker Mitchell at times coming off. I don't know if what was going on with him. Well, it wasn't as much part of the game plan. The Bruins should have him as well. Coach Demetrius says, Cash and Walker Mitchell, potentially 2 starters, should probably be getting a lot of bench minutes. More than, of course, again, I get the urgency, but again, you kind of probably have to fight, your depth, your best depth with the other team's depth, especially how, again, deep teams like Hayfield and Woodson have it for themselves. You have to use as much depth as you can. So really the Bruins, we more so saw them rock a bit of a tighter rotation in the playoffs. Interesting change considering, again, you have Mitchell and Cash, the 2 potential starters that Coach Demetrius talked about, Riley Peterson, who've been playing a key role, Dean Johnson, even a little bit I was surprised by. So you had that going on. Now, again, Bruins most likely weren't going to make states this year. Let's be honest. The region, you had Hayfield you had to get through. You have a guy named Woodson to get through. Edison, West Potomac. South County. Robinson. Although the Bruins have handled them very well this year, they're a tough out for quite a few teams, as they were a lot of times this year. So you had them to deal with. So yeah, certainly a lot of teams out there that the Bruins would have had to get through. Some of them they could probably get through. They probably wouldn't get through Woodson or Hayfield. They play pretty close with Woodson. They can keep up with them when you're playing at their best against them. Hayfield, Edison, Edison, I feel like more so if they're fully healthy. Hayfield, not so much. I feel like Hayfield is much more of an outlier than Woodson and Edison are. So, got that going on. But, again, the Bruins, the positive is that they definitely had a much better season. Of course, they finished 500 or better for the first time in 3 years. So, good thing for the Bruins on that end. They sort of were able to put it together. I think this is one of the seasons where they're healthier. Last year, they had a 2023, 2024. They had a lot of injuries. That's why they went 3-20. Overall, not a lot of talent on a team in terms of experience. But, again, they got a lot of that experience, after last year. What a comeback for Bruins they made this year. Would say definitely a good sign for them going in the right direction since, again, considering the last 2 years have not been so great. So Bruins seem to be back on their feet. And what you expect to hopefully see with them next year is that they will be a lot better. They should have higher expectations. We'll kind of get into the bring back in a few moments. But again, Coach Mitras is, he kind of always keeps the Bruins up there as one of the teams to always be competing most years, as we've seen in the past. And so, it should be something you expect to see next year. They're returning a lot of talent. You have now the starters you do lose. You lose Tyee Clayton. You lose David Main, 4-year varsity guy. You lose Nick Tarr at small forward. Clayton at the 1, and then Main at 4. So you have to replace those 3. Now looking at the team, the starters have coming back are Nate McComb, second-team All-District center, really good this year. And you have Burkentena, who will be a junior next year. He's coming back at shooting guard. So next year, of course, we talked about 2 starters, Cash and Walker Mitchell. They should be getting some significant time next year. Cash should be starting guard, probably starting at the 1. Walker Mitchell probably starting, I would say, at the 3. And then you probably have someone like Riley Peterson starting at 4. So definitely a lot of the depth that the Bruins had this year off a bench. Probably taking a lot of starting roles next year. And overall, I think that could be a pretty solid lineup. I think their overall is very physical. That's what I noticed. It's going to be very physical. It's probably going to be more, I would say, defensively oriented. Definitely, you'll probably have most of the scoring being ran through Nate McComb most of the time, I would say, since he was the second leading scorer on the team this year, and you have him coming back. Dean Johnson is also back in the team next year, so you'll have him, probably come off the bench too, maybe a potential star, but I'm guessing Cash with more experience would be the favorite to start at the 1 or any guard position next year. If you want to move him and Burkentena around, you have, I guess other guys, you have Tyee Clayton's younger brother, Cush Clayton, and then you'll have Malcolm Easley as well. That's another guy that's come back. And I know that they have they have a tough playing JV team, some tough guys over there. They have some big guys in JV. I watched the JV team play at some home games this year before the varsity games would start. JV team can put up a good fight. Some very good of JV teams around here. So the JV team definitely has some talent on there to look out for. I don't really know any specific names to look out for, but I know inside they'll have some good guys. So again, probably more, kind of play, more size and use more of that dangerous physicality that a lot of those guys all have. So again, some pressure, but again, should be expected still to do pretty well. And then you're going to have, something we also saw, Nate McComb. We stopped talk about him probably stepping up as a lead scorer, probably running the offense mostly through him as a number one option next year. We saw in a postseason and last couple weeks of a year where he started to be a lot more aggressive, shooting threes and getting more clean looks to knock down some shots from longer ranges from the mid-range as well. So that'll also be something to really watch out for. See how he progresses in that. I liked how he looked during the postseason. Got some good looks. Bruins got him wide open to get those shots. And so I think that'll be something that McComb will probably be working on a lot in this offseason. You also have, people coming up from freshman JV, like we said. Maybe we get some good transfers. Who knows? Only time will tell. But overall, there should still be a solid team next season. Probably kind of more of the same this year. Good defense. Keep up with some of the best teams in the area. Scoring-wise, probably won't be as... I wouldn't expect there maybe to be as much explosive scoring as this year, but I wouldn't count it out. So that's what you'd probably expect to see next year. And overall, if you want to talk about Bruins season from more of a wider range of how they performed, I think the Bruins were actually better than they were, in terms of being 500. There are, again, definitely a lot of games that they could have won. You talk about there's a lot of close games, a couple of close games that they played with West Springfield, that close game with Heritage, who's in the Class 4 state tournament. I believe they're in Class 4. They actually were they lost the Class 4C finals to Tuscarora, who's kind of a power over there in Loudoun County. And they only played lost to Heritage by 2 points, a very good young team. And, that's something, the Bruins had going for them well. They played a lot of close games. They, again, they were able to keep up very well with Woodson for a couple games. And definitely if the Bruins played up to their best and against Woodson in those games, and I think there's actually, they could have probably beaten Woodson in at least one of those games, whether it was the home game Lake Braddock or the district semis game over at South County this season. But, certainly a lot of good good sights, I should say. Can't speak. With the Bruins. So, expect to see all that good stuff for Bruins next year. But again, congratulations to Lake Braddock boys basketball. A good rebound season. Getting back to some good winning ways. And again, they could be certainly a few games over 500. So I think their record is definitely better than it says, and they're just being average. I think Bruins are definitely a slightly above average team than what their record says. So with all of that out of the way, we are just about to end the show here. But before we wrap up here today, I did want to announce, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are wondering about this. And the question is, when will we start getting some spring sports coverage with baseball and softball? Well, I will tell you, my friends, we will be getting into that the very next show. Now, I can't tell you when that show exactly will be. I'm kind of waiting for some things, with both those teams. I know the baseball rosters still haven't come out on the Lake Braddock Athletics website yet, so I'm trying to wait to see what full glance of that is. Softball, I know way went on. If you guys know, if you guys know this podcast, 643, it's run by the same people who I think it's the same people who run the facilities. A lot of the softball players are very familiar with it. Basically, it's a chain of facilities, and in the Nova area for softball training. and they have their own podcast. One of them is the head coach over at Riverside and Leesburg, Class 5 reigning state champions for Nova Power in Riverside Rams, Kevin Bednoski, I think is his name. I know he had Lake Braddock on his podcast over there. They were kind of there for a media day talk and doing an interview for a little preview of what to expect this season. Now, the episode hasn't come out yet, so I'm hoping that'll hopefully comes out next week or so, and I want to take a look at that to give you guys some more information because that's going to have a lot. So again, there's a couple things I'm waiting on for you guys to hear because I want you guys to obviously get the best perspective from me, get the most in-depth information. So that way we can run some good shows over here. But it's going to be a blast talking about it. It's definitely spring. Probably one of my favorite times of the year. And more commentating, more podcasting coming up soon. So make sure you guys in the future hopefully tune in to that. So again, I will keep you guys updated. Make sure you follow the Adam Azera Show over on X. I'll keep you guys updated over there for when the next podcast episode will be. But yeah, first episode, we will get into some spring sports talk. Depending on if it's baseball or softball, we will see. I'm leaning more so towards the side of softball. Their roster is out, so we kind of know who's on the team there. Again, 6-4 free podcast episode. Probably going to wait on that and then kind of get some commentary off that to tell you guys some of the stuff that they said on there. And that seems to be more so what's going to be coming out first compared to baseball, which will be a little bit later. So we'll have some separate episodes specifically softball, so for baseball for some preview stuff and kind of what to expect from a team this year, breaking down the teams. We're also going to break down some of the district where, we're going to be placing predictions on where both teams will finish. So definitely a lot of stuff to unravel there. But make sure you guys tune in. Again, coming up, follow the show on X to keep up with the latest updates on the show. And make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to make sure you don't miss any other further episodes of the show. Make sure you turn on notifications. Do the same thing as well. Share this video with a friend, or you can raise the viewership. Greatly appreciated, you guys. Thank you very much, and we will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in.